Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. I'm Steve Kenyon. I'll be honest, I've taken a couple of weeks off. But we're back, and I think we've got a couple of great shows coming up. Later on, you'll hear from Tyler Waguspak and Sarah Rose Waguspak. Tyler, of course, the five-time world champion steer wrestler, and Sarah, national finalist in the barrel racing. And we'll talk a little bit about their family, their sponsorship arrangements. They just hooked me up with a brand-new partner, Cubit Hay Company. They're centered out of Idaho, and great people producing a great product. You want to take hay with you wherever you go. Hay cubes are an easy way to do it. You're guaranteed consistent quality, the same kind of feed wherever you're at. Check them out online, cubithay.com, cubithay.com. And thanks to Tyler and Sarah Waguspak for the introduction to J.C. Neville and his crew from Cubit Hay Company. We're looking forward to telling you a lot more about them. That'll be a show that'll be coming up in the next few days. Today, we get a chance to visit with Megan McLeod Sprague, who just lit them up in San Antonio. We'll talk about the ground situation in San Antonio. We'll talk about her career. All of that is on the way in just a few minutes here on the Steve Kenyon Podcast. Thank you to Rodeo Life Magazine. They've been at it since 1961. Thank you to Cubit Hay Company, to M2 Ranch Jerky. You can find them online at m2-ranch.com. Team Equinity, teamequinity.com. It's all about the horse at Equinity. To the Justin Boot Company, to the Grandview at Las Vegas, dailymanagementresorts.com, to Wrangler, the official Western Wear Pro Rodeo, to Resistol, the proud sponsors of the Resistol Rookie of the Year Award. The Gooding Pro Rodeo in Gooding, Idaho is getting ready to celebrate the Gooding County Fair 100 years this year. We'll be talking a lot more about that between now and August. Thanks to Next Gen Rodeo and to the Cowboy Channel, and of course to the sponsors of our featured interviews, Classic Equine and Classic Ropes. We're going to take a time out, and when we come back, you will have a chance to hear from Megan McLeod Sprague, the newly crowned champion of the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo in the Barrel Race, and right now number one in the WPRA's world standings. Thanks for joining us on the Steve Kenyon Podcast.
There's no pretending to being a cowboy. Either you are or you aren't, which is why everything we do as a company improves or preserves this way of life. The romance, the honesty, the toughness, the craft. More cowboys, please. America could use them. Resistol. We live it every day.
For 145 years, Justin has crafted boots tailored for life in the dirt, accompanying your every step with reliability and quality. Whether in the arena lights or long days on the job, our boots are an integral part of your team. With a storied history, our boots echo through generations, connecting the past, present, and ensuring the same quality that we built our name on. Find your boots at justinboots.com.
I get a chance to visit with a really good friend today, and I couldn't be more proud of her. Megan McLeod Sprague, now number one in the WPRA's world standings after winning the rodeo in San Antonio, finishing in the number two spot in the short round in Fort Worth, and winning $47,000 and counting right now in 2025. Megan McLeod Sprague, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Steve?
Good. Thank you for your time, Megan. I appreciate it. So you've been a kind of a national traveler. You are actually back home in Idaho after winning San Antonio. You've had a few days to digest what you got done in San Antonio. I'm going to throw you the biggest softball on the planet. What's going through your mind after what you and Jagger were able to accomplish at the San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo?
Steve, it's actually kind of an interesting phenomena for me because the best way I know to describe the way I'm feeling is that I'm very at peace with it. Anybody who knows Jag's story and what we've been through the last 7 months particularly, but even the accomplishments that we had prior to him getting hurt, every run is a blessing. And I said that a long time before he ever got hurt, but it just really came full circle after that. And, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing feeling. But one of the things that I've really worked on mentally is not getting too high or too low while you're playing this game. And, I would be lying to you to tell you I'm not riding a pretty good high, but it's in a healthy way.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think that's important in the rodeo business. you're able to take a little break now. You go back to Houston in a week or two, but I think that's important in the rodeo business, and it's probably important in life to learn how to not let the highs get you too jacked up and the lows get you too down, because the thing I've learned over 65 plus years of life is the sun's still going to rise tomorrow, and it really doesn't care what we did today. So
That's exactly right.
You gotta roll with it day by day.
Yep, I agree with that, Steve. And I actually had a really good friend of mine, send me a memory that popped up on his Facebook from several years ago that I did. It was, gosh, I can't remember exactly what I had gotten done, but I did an interview with the late Thomas Duncan, and when he posted that on his Facebook, it talked about taking each day by day and appreciating it for what it is, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And it was actually kind of the perfect reminder through all of that, especially after losing Thomas, who was a great friend of mine. And that, yeah, I mean, this is great and it's fun, but like you said, a lot of the world doesn't know what happened. So, I better be doing this for me and my family and what our goals are, and not for everybody else.
Yeah. Megan, let me ask you, just for those of you who may have missed it, Megan made 5 runs in San Antonio, 4 of them on Jagger, right? You got on
Yep.
your other horse one time.
Yep.
Won first all 4 times. The one run was during that moment that we'll talk about when everybody was questioning the ground conditions, and your horse had a stumble and hit the second barrel. But you also made the 2 fastest runs at one of the biggest rodeos of the year, a 1370 to start the rodeo and a 1374 to finish the rodeo. Let me ask you this may sound like a dumb question, but describe Jagger to me. Tell me about your horse.
He's a pretty interesting being. I was asked that recently the other day too, and it's funny because I call him Buck a lot because he reminds me a lot of my husband. He is, he's very, he's kind of like, he reminds me of kind of like a Marine. Like, he's very serious. He takes his job very seriously,
Huh.
but at the same time, he knows how to let loose and have fun. And he's such an interesting horse in that a lot of people think that he's very stoic and very businesslike and doesn't have a lot of personality, because when I get on him, it is all business. But in all the fun moments in between those, when we're just at the stall or at the trailer or whatever, I actually have several pictures from San Antone of him snuggling with my kids and with Carly Otero's kids, and Brittany Posey's daughter came over and gave him a bunch of love. And, so it's he's actually got a really neat personality, kind of a hard shell to crack, but soft on the inside kind of a guy.
Well, that's interesting. Describe his style, Megan. I was watching. We were watching some highlights yesterday on TV after Ty McClary and I interviewed you on Western Sports Roundup, and I said I think he makes kind of a V-shaped first barrel, and then the next highlight we looked at, it was a much more round first barrel. Describe his style.
He's I guess in the barrel horse terms of describing styles, I would call him a tail dragger. He runs extremely hard up into the hole and then kind of puts the brake on and reverses. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Steve. I kind of more of it's really unique. Because I want to say that he's a little straighter through a turn and a V style type horse, but kind of really not either. So, he's real shapy. He really allows, people, again, this is funny because the one thing, if I had $1 for every time somebody saw me on Jag's back and they say, oh, he's ready to go, that is like, I would be a millionaire, because, he doesn't know how to walk. And, but for being that kind of a horse who's, head's kind of in the air and his chest is puffed out and all the things, he really allows me to handle him. So I can really shape him going into a turn. And I think now, looking back, I think I've been fighting this injury in his back for quite some time, because I was hitting some barrels on him last year, and I couldn't kind of figure out why. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't pick him up where I wanted him to be. And I think now that all had to do with the injury, because right now he's so responsive and he's so in my hands that he's really allowing me to help him when in the few moments that he's needed help.
He had some kind of a deep muscle something. I don't know that. I think you said on TV yesterday that the veterinarians never really completely diagnosed it, but 6 or 7 months off after the month of June, you won a round in Reno, and then you ran in the short round in Reno, and you knew something was wrong, and that's when you laid him off, if I remember the story right. Time heals a lot of things, and he's had a chance not just for whatever that thing in his back was, but everything else to get better.
Right. And, so at Reno, you're correct on that. The story is, I was like 10th, 11th, something like that in the world, got to Reno. I was just shocked that I won the first round because he really didn't feel very good. He didn't work like himself. Came back that night, ran okay that night. I didn't place in the round, I don't think, but, made the short go, ended up 5th in the average. After I got done, we actually drove. I live about 6.5 hours from Reno, and we drove home that night because my kids had a junior rodeo the next day. And, after I ran, I iced his legs and did kind of my post run routine, and he seemed fine. I didn't, I didn't feel that really great about the way he was working. He was winning. And so I was kind of trying to, push that to the back of my mind. And we got home about 5 a.m, and I unloaded him, and Buck went in the house to get the kids ready to go to the rodeo. And I turned him out on his little pasture here at my house. And when he trotted off, my heart sank because I really and truly believed he broke his pelvis. That's how lame he was. And so, of course, that sent me into a little bit of a tailspin, and especially because we were supposed to be leaving the next day for the 4th of July run. And so it was, that was a real moment in my career that I can say was probably kind of a defining moment of, for me at the age I'm at, and having done this as long as I have, something that really taught me some lessons that I had to keep my mental game put together as well as I could. And I think I did a fairly decent job of that over the rest of the summer. It wasn't great, but it was good. And, yes, you're correct too, Stephen, that we never got really official diagnosis. There was several vets throughout the country that I consider the best there are that looked at him, and there's no imaging. It's hard for where his injury that we believe occurred because there's no actual imaging to get that deep in his back. So we're kind of still guessing, but when you can put 3 or 4 of the best minds together in the country and they can concur on something, I feel pretty good about trusting them on that.
You've been barrel racing a long time, following in the footsteps of your mom, Terry, who has barrel raced for a long time. And I remember telling the folks in the Cowboy Channel offices yesterday, I said, she was talking to veterinarians, and I remember a veterinarian, I forget who it was one time, telling me that 70 or 80 or 90% of veterinary medicine is taking care of the owners. And
sure.
And for some reason I was thinking, okay, during this whole time, they're saying, Megan, we don't know exactly what's wrong with your horse. And they're still trying to keep you calm and positive and whatever. I think I'm wondering if that was I notice that every time we take a horse or a dog or whatever to the vet now, that there's a certain level of them taking care of us that goes into all of that.
Totally. Stephen, I'm pretty fortunate. My main vet, who is Billy Maupin at Idaho Equine Hospital, he not only is he my vet, but he's a lifelong friend. He was a great friend of my mom and dad's. He was at my mom's vet. One of Billy's favorite things to tell people about me is he can remember feeding me corn dogs as a little girl when we'd go in for vet appointments. So I've known Billy a long time. He's very invested in my career and in my life. I tell people now he's as much like a dad to me as he is a vet. And so I'm pretty fortunate to have that kind of a relationship with my main vet. And he was, Stuart Shoemaker got in on it, who's also a highly, highly respected vet that another person who's been great in my career and in my life. We all kind of collaborated. We ended up in Arizona with Martin Vidal at Cave Creek Equine. Marty Tanner looked at him. I mean, There was just a lot of great minds behind this. And I'm very thankful because you're correct. I think all of them, especially Billy and Stuart, were taking care of me as much as they were Jag. And, But I was very fortunate to have those kind of people on my team through all of this.
Yeah, boy, when you say some of the best minds in the world, you mean it. With all of those guys working on your horse at one time. Megan, let's talk about the devil in the room, I guess, during San Antonio, and that was the ground situation. You were so positive, and when Haley Novak interviewed you after you won the rodeo, very, very, I thought, forward-thinking in your comments. And I just really, it shouldn't happen that there are problems, but you got to applaud San Antonio because they did what they needed to do. They brought in the right people, and there were issues. Yes, there was a lot of chatter on Facebook and all over social media, but yes, they fixed it. Those results showed over the last, 3 or 4 performances of the rodeo, right? Tell your thoughts on all of that.
Absolutely. And we kind of touched on this yesterday, but for those that didn't see that, yeah, it got real scary there actually for a minute, Steve. The first 2 rounds I ran Jag in my set. Our game plan all along was to run Vice if I had the final or the semifinals made. Which, by the way, I got to give Vice a little shout out too. When I hit that barrel to win the round on him too.
Yeah,
so,
you did.
Good. I think Vice got overlooked a little bit through all that, but that's okay. And, but he, that was our game plan. That wasn't a ground situation decision that was made long before the rodeo ever even started. However, with that being said, when the ground was what it was, and I was 4th out on the drag, I don't believe, and I can't quote this for sure, but I don't believe that there was a round 1 throughout the entire rodeo that was further down than 3rd out on the ground. And I was 4th out, so we had already made that decision, but we revisited it and made the conscious decision that, hey, I'm 4th out on the ground. It's not the best it can be. We're not going to risk Jag. And then, so we did that and I had the semifinals made and that was fine. And then when I watched the Thursday semifinals, the very first semifinals, it was pretty treacherous.
Yeah.
I mean, let's call a spade, right? The ground was absolutely treacherous in the second half of the semifinals. And I had actually flown to Tucson that day. I was up at Tucson, have another horse in Arizona, and I was at my house in Phoenix to watch that. And I called Buck immediately and I said, I cannot run Jag in the semifinals. They have to fix that. And he agreed. I got on the phone immediately with Heidi Schmidt. Andrea Busby and I were going back and forth. Of course the beehive was buzzing. I'll put it that way, Steve.
Yeah.
So, we all kind of got on the horn the next morning. San Antonio actually contacted Carly Otero, who then contacted the rest of us. They wanted to have a meeting, which we were very, very grateful for. And what it comes down to in the end, Steve, was that they had some good, competent people working the ground. The problem was they were not being allowed the time in the arena to prep the ground properly. And B, and I think this is a really interesting thing because I don't think a lot of people understand this. The guy that was on the tractor isn't overly familiar with the Black Widow. He lives in a part of the country where Black Widows are not used that much. And he was just not overly comfortable using the Black Widow. And that was really what that ground needed, was the Black Widow. And that's when the decision was made. We begged and begged and begged San Antonio. Heidi was in the background. She wasn't actually in San Antonio, but she was on the phone in the background with them. And Cody Davenport, who's the CEO of San Antonio, she was on the phone with him. The decision was finally concluded that they called Randy Spraggins. Ricky Hibbler, who was Randy's guy, was there ASAP, got on the Black Widow, got some water on the ground. I don't know how in the world he changed that ground in 2 hours, but he did it.
I'll be darned.
And he's, in my mind, he's a magician. And, him and Randy collaborated from that point forward. And it was, really, I thought the ground was the best that it could be given the situation. I think it could even be better. Cody, I spoke with Cody after the rodeo on Saturday night and he agreed, and they're very, very on board. My hat is off to San Antonio that they are very on board to have it right. And I wouldn't be surprised to see San Antonio win Ground of the Year next year.
Yeah, didn't you see on TV yesterday that what they've been bringing in there, because that's a basketball court, so they bring it in and then they take it out, and they might just replace the dirt completely that they've been bringing in.
That was kind of my understanding. Sage Henner, I believe her name was, a really great gal that was on the San Antonio committee, was visiting with us and kind of gave us a history of that. And she said that the ground, some of the ground that's in there was used in the 80s. It's been, of course, it's been added
Wow.
to and taken away and all these things. But and of course, weather elements because it's stored outside, and all these things go into that. And so it is a challenge, and they are challenged with the time because of the concerts, and it is a very challenging thing. But it did sound like they are aware that probably having ground from the 80s is not overly conducive to what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And they're very dedicated to making it right next year.
Here's
So
the thing, and this is not a question. This is more a statement by me than anything else. But I've had stock contractors tell me if the arena conditions are good for the barrel horses, then they're probably good for the rope horses and the bucking horses and everybody else too. Your husband was a steer wrestler for a long time. Now I think he's pretty much a barrel racer's assistant. But don't tell Buck I said that. Don't delete that. Edit that out. No, wait, I'm the one that edits it. But I really believe if the arena conditions are good for the barrel horses, they're good for everybody.
I agree with that, Steve. And I think, some of the old school mindsets would disagree with that. But I mean, really and truly, they're, and this is the thing, and I don't care if you're a barrel racer, a team roper, a bulldog, or a bareback rider, we all want what's best for rodeo. There isn't one single person that rodeos that doesn't want what's best for rodeo. And I agree. And I've spent some time with, stock contractors. I went to school at CSI, Sean Davis. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot from him about bucking horses and bulls. And I promise you that I want the same thing for the bucking horses that the stock contractors do.
Yeah.
And that in the end, first and foremost is for a sound horse. And I'm really good friends with Binion Servey too, and we've visited a lot. In fact, I got more hugs from Binion at San Antonio than I think I ever have, because he knows that I want what's best for him too. And so I totally agree with that. And interestingly enough, Steve, I didn't personally have these conversations, but I heard that Junior Noguera and JD Struckness both said that they were affected by the ground. Their runs were affected by the ground at San Antonio.
Yeah. It might show up more with the barrel horses, but I remember going to a couple of rodeos that I broadcast where I saw saddle bronc riding horses fall down, and I just thought, oh God, barrel racing is going to be terrible here, and I was right.
Yeah.
But the bottom line here, I think, is yes, there was a problem. Shout out to Cody Davenport and to the rest of the team in San Antonio, because yes, there was a problem, and yes, they fixed it. And
I think that's the
thing
hardest thing.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's the hardest thing, right? Is to admit there was a problem, and they did. I mean, they knew it, they saw it, and they were the first ones to jump on it, by reaching out to us. So I think that speaks volumes for them, and I really hope that not only the higher beings, but the other rodeo committees see that.
Yeah.
And we want, none of us as barrel racers wanted to not run at San Antonio or wanted to anything. That we want to put on a good show.
Yep.
And the only way you can put on a good show, especially when you have horses like Jarvis and Rollo and those kind of horses out there, the better the ground is, the better your show's going to be.
Yep.
So,
and oh, by the way, those are millions of dollars worth of horses. And
yes.
With all the television coverage now and these rodeos being televised live, the last thing we want is for somebody to get in a bad wreck.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Megan, let me ask you a question about your background and your history. You're getting a lot of attention right now. You've been at this for a while. You reminded me yesterday something I'd forgotten, that you started barrel racing when you were 14 years old, which was 3 or 4 years ago. But you've been at this for a while, and now you're probably getting more attention than you've ever gotten over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And which is fun. It's interesting, Steve. I bought my permit. My birthday's in December. And so, gosh, I would have turned 14. And I might as well just put it out there. The world can figure it out anyway. I bought my permit in December of 1996 when I was 14. And January 1st of 1997 is when they changed the age to 18. So I got
Really?
kind of grandfathered into the WPRA. Filled my permit that year, made my first circuit finals in 1997 or 8. Kind of can't remember exactly how that went, but anyway, it was a long time ago,
Yeah.
put it that way. And and yeah, so and I've been on several different horses. I've been blessed to have a lot of success on several different horses. And it's funny because Jag probably is he's probably the best horse I've ever been on, which is fun because I've been on a lot of really great ones. But he also just has that little tiny bit of extra that you have to have, especially now. And it's been fun, because I think I actually saw a comment. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I have a gal that runs my social media page. But I did get on there the other day and I saw somebody commented. It made me laugh kind of hard because she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see this team finally getting together." And I'm like, finally getting together. We've won we've won the circuit the last 2 years, set an arena record at Reno. I guess none of that counted. But it's funny because like I said, I think through the last few years I've been fighting some stuff with Jagger that we didn't realize we were fighting because he's so tough.
Yeah.
And he's performed miraculously through all that, and now that he's sound, we're really having a chance for him to show his stuff. So
What's his breeding, Megan? I should know this and I don't.
he's by Dash to Fame out of Tellum Bell, who is by Alan Woodbury's great mare, who made the finals with Nikki Steffes, Nikki Hansen now. And Tellum Bell is by Trace Sace out of a Corona Cartel mare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that explains a lot about why he's so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because the bloodlines say it. You're up in Houston next. Tell me about managing and balancing your time as a mom with kids in school, kids who are junior rodeoing or high school rodeoing now. I honestly don't know how old your kids are now, but and just kind of talk about that whole. Folks don't understand. Yeah, we get to talking on the Cowboy Channel so much about, well, here's who did great at the last rodeo, and I think we forget sometimes to point out that everybody that we talk about has a life and a family and, maybe businesses outside of rodeo and things like that.
Sure. So my kids are 13. Marky's my oldest. She's 13 now, just turned 13, seventh grader. And Smokey is my youngest, who is a 8-year-old second grader. And we have, it's funny because part of the reason I think that maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, I guess we'll never know. But part of the reason I haven't ever gone harder is because I had some personal challenges, family stuff that I couldn't leave that much. I just had some things that were kind of holding me back from really letting, myself be 100% dedicated. And we just, in anything, I guess, anymore, but especially in this sport, if you're not 100% dedicated, you're not getting to where you want to be. And I've had some real challenges with that over the last 13 years. And I'm finally at a place where I'm have broken away from that. And I think that the results is what you're seeing, which is great because I wasn't sure even, if what was going to happen. But yes, you're correct. I'm between Buck and I, and gosh, thank the good Lord for Buck, because I don't know what I'd do without him. He's in Texas. We have Smokey in homeschool. He's doing a homeschool / online school program. So he's in Texas with Buck. Mark is still in school up here in Idaho. Between my mom and I and Paige Gartner, a friend of mine, her daughter, Casey Gartner's daughter, Paige Gartner, has come down to Idaho a couple of times to help me out getting Marky to school. And it's really been, I actually felt bad. I had a gal call me for a trade. I believe it was at Fort Worth this year. And I felt horrible because I couldn't trade. I had like thousands of dollars invested in plane tickets already to make all these moving parts work. And thank goodness she was very kind about it. But I just said, I can't. I would love to, but I've already bought all my plane tickets. And, the logistics of me doing this it would blow a lot of people's minds, I think.
Yeah. I think that is a behind the scenes story that I could tell about hundreds of rodeo athletes, about the majority of the folks that we see in December in Las Vegas. if you got into the behind the scenes and the logistics and the managing families and all those kinds of things, Scott Gentner, the steer wrestler, retired, semi-retired, and then he makes it back to the NFR last year.
Yeah.
And his concern were things like families and wanting to stay closer to home. But this sport presents some unique opportunities at the same time for people who want to, if you want to travel in the summer with the kids and things like that. There are unique opportunities along with unique challenges.
Absolutely. And, we actually, we were a little bit disappointed at San Antonio because we really, really wanted to go to the Alamo and take Smoke there. And, he's probably a little bit young to really appreciate it, but we weren't. So,
Wow.
and I've only ever been to the Alamo once in all the years I've been to San Antonio. And so we really wanted to do that. And it just, to be honest, Steve, we put so much time into Jagger between Buck and I. We pretty much have hands on Jagger, for hours and hours throughout the day, prepping him. And so we just didn't have time. It was just something we didn't have time to do. And which is kind of a bummer because that is something that, as our goal as a family being out on the road, we really want to give our kids the chance to see some of these sites and historical places and, Mount Rushmore and doing kind of some of those type of things. And because we want to make it educational too. And, I think that's important. And, I don't know. I think that like you said, while there's huge challenges, there's also huge opportunities. And so we really try to work those in when we can.
When you go back to San Antonio next year to defend your title, go to the Alamo.
Yes.
You can literally almost, and the interesting thing about the time of the San Antonio Rodeo, you and I are talking on Wednesday, February 26th, and I'm doing this from memory, but if I remember my history right, the siege of the Alamo was just starting back in the 1830s, right about now. And I think March 6th is the day that everybody go look that up. You're within I'm within a couple of days of being right one way or the other. So San Antonio doesn't quite fall on top of the history and the anniversary of all of the things that happened at the Alamo, but it's darn close.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way you do. I've seen Mount Rushmore. I've seen the Crazy Horse Monument in South Dakota. I've had a chance to go to the Alamo. I've had a chance to go to the Kennedy Space Center. I'm just sitting here thinking of all the places I've gone to that I probably would have never gone to if I weren't in the rodeo business. Little Bighorn.
Right. Well, and we were actually having that discussion. One of Marca's teachers wasn't very happy with me of how much school she's missed this year. And I thought, I wouldn't be overly surprised if she's never been out of the, Treasure Valley in Idaho. I don't think that people really understand what some of the opportunities these kids have being out on the road presents. So last question for you, Megan, and I really appreciate your time. You are not quite halfway, but you're almost halfway to what it took to qualify for the NFR last December. And so after being at this for a lot of years and after having ridden some outstanding horses, I want you to think ahead to December and what it might be like to have the opportunity to ride into that yellow arena in Las Vegas for the first time. Steve, it actually gave me chills for you to even say it because I think that, there's a lot of year left and a lot of things can happen, but I think maybe now more than ever, I have as good of a opportunity to get there as I ever have. And I would be lying to you to tell you I hadn't thought about that already. I can tell you this, I'm already trying to, I actually already have somebody lined up to take care of my horses down there during the day when I'm doing other stuff, the other obligations the contestants have. I already have some people lined up because I've had them lined up for years. Yeah. And so, and I've been there enough as a spectator. My husband has worked on Benny for Andrea and Brittany the last 2 years. We have a pretty good idea of what goes on behind the scenes. So I feel a little bit more prepared than maybe somebody else would that hasn't been, for a first time. But, at this point, I'm just going to keep taking it run for run. And if we get to come down that alley, that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Okay, so I said last question, and this is fairly normal for me. Last question just got moved to one more question. Your next rodeo is Houston. San Antonio's on a basketball court. Houston's on a football field. the setup is completely different at the rodeo in Houston. In Houston, they don't use the whole football field for the barrel race in particular because they're trying to keep the barrel pattern, as I understand it, off of the area where they set up the concert stage after the rodeo each night. But I guess to put this in the form of a question, does Jagger have a preference? Big arena, small arena, wide open Cheyenne, little tiny San Antonio, smaller, slightly larger Fort Worth? Does he have a question one way or the other, or a preference one way or the other?
Well, before San Antonio, I would have told you yes. But I guess I can't really say that anymore. But no, I actually, if I were to choose on Jag which one I wanted to run at, I'd tell you Houston. He is typically those big wide open. Those are the ones he craves. And I did great at Houston last year, won fourth at Houston last year. And so I'll be honest with you too. Last year, 2 years ago, when I got to Houston, I was a little bit scared of the ground, which is funny because I've, been doing this a long time and ground never scares me. And I was that year. Last year I went in with a little different mindset and Jag worked great. And I would be lying to you to tell you I haven't been waiting a whole year to get back to Houston.
Yeah. Cool. Well, and this year it pays $65,000 to win it. So there's 15,000 more reasons to go have a good trip to the rodeo in Houston. If things go really well for you, Megan, over the next couple of months, and if you continue to win, and if you come out of you told us yesterday on TV your goal was like $20,000 out of the buildings. Well, you kind of blew that out of the water. You're at $47,000. If things continue to go well, and if you've got $50 or $60 or $70 or $80,000 won, will Jag get some? Will that limit Jag's runs? Will that affect how you handle your horses? Will Vice become the relief pitcher that eats up a lot of innings, or in this case, a lot of rodeos? And he can win as well. How will that affect your plan?
Honestly, Steve, even with the money won, it doesn't change my plan a ton. Jag was going to get a break after Houston, no matter what. Even if I had no money won. So he's 14 this year. He doesn't owe me a thing. And now he really doesn't owe me anything. And he's going to go. I actually think what I might do is send him back to the rehab center that he was at, getting back in shape. Because my plan is to go out to California. And Jag was never on the docket. He did great in California. I won second at Red Bluff and maybe eighth or something at Clovis last year. But he just doesn't owe me that. So he gets a break. I may or may not send him to that rehab center, just to keep him going a little bit. So he's ready for the summer run. He loves the summer run. And so we're looking forward to that. And I plan on having him for Sisters and, Reno and some of these rodeos he's continually showed well at. So.
Awesome. Megan, I appreciate your time. I kept you a lot longer than I asked you for.
That's okay.
Congratulations on San Antonio. Say hi to Buck for me, and we'll see you somewhere soon.
That sounds great. Say hello to Philip and Tracy for me.
You got it. Thanks. Megan McLeod Sprague joining us. Barrel racer Megan McLeod Sprague from Idaho, now number 1 in the WPRA's world standings after a big win at the rodeo in San Antonio. Thank you to Rodeo Life magazine, to Cubit Hay Company, to M2 Ranch Jerky, to Equinity, online at teamequinity.com, to the Justin Boot Company, the standard of the West since 1879, the Grandview at Las Vegas, to Wrangler and Resistol, to the Gooding Pro Rodeo. Our featured interview is brought to you by Classic Equine. Success, play to win. We are Classic Equine and Classic Ropes. Success is in your hands. Thank you to Next Gen Rodeo and, of course, to the Cowboy Channel. Join us weekday afternoons on Western Sports Roundup. We'll be back with you again. Tyler and Sarah Rose Wagyusback on our next episode of the Steve Kenyon Podcast.